What's up, everyone? We're back and we're happy. The basketball is back. The Bucks have their rings. The banner was unveiled. Giannis was dominant. They beat the Nets 127-104. We're going to break it all down here because there is plenty to talk about. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see me and hear me daily on this show and also find my work over at ESPN and NBA Australia. And joining me is the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. And these are our favorite podcasts to do, Frank. We love doing the post-game pods. That's obviously the most exciting time to talk about the team, especially when they have a big win like they did tonight. Before we dive into it, today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by McDonald's. Proudly serving communities since 1965, McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. Frank, I'm loving it. And I'm also loving the Bucks tonight. So this was fun. They go out, they beat the Nets 127-104. And really, I think the pregame ceremony, the rings, the banner, all that stuff just got you excited anyway and put you in a good mood. And we've discussed the fact that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to know how teams will respond. The Bucks responded fantastically well, and they blew this game out open. And really, not quite a wire-to-wire win, but close enough.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm sufficiently geared up here, Kane. I feel like I maybe need some. I don't have any rings. I don't have any bling. But I feel like if ever I was gonna break out the champ's hat,
yes,
maybe some of these.
I
feel like tonight is kind of the night. Okay, I'm not gonna wear this.
This screenshot is going to be on Twitter within an hour, and it is going to be viral.
My hair is like fully Conan O'Briening right now, by the way, as well. For those listening on the podcast, good for you because you didn't have to see that. I mean, I don't know if any of us really knew what to expect from a ring night. I mean, you know what these things generally look like in terms of the actual ceremony, but I think just seeing it, Jim Paschke being back, Jim having the I Heart Giannis shirt, and then embracing Giannis during the ceremony. And how about those warm ups? I mean, I've got, for those watching, I've got my Bucks black zip up thing. They had the fully blinged out white with gold trim warm up jackets on. I'm guessing we'll see a few of those around the state of Wisconsin soon. But yeah, I mean, obviously just a special opportunity to I don't want to say one last celebration, but the last sort of formal celebration of the championship. And as you said, when we talked about it, I mean, there's a fair history of teams coming out very flat on nights where they get their rings, and you could tell. I mean, the Bucks enjoyed it. The seeing the rings. Brooke Lopez just looked so happy. Brooke, I think Brooke may have been the most happy person. He just seemed to be kind of soaking it up. Giannis, I mean, guys, I think it really meant a lot, even though they knew that they had to then immediately go into game face mode and play, the team that many think is the favorite for the championship this year in the Brooklyn Nets. So just a really cool, ceremony. And, we'll always now say that we've seen a banner ceremony in Milwaukee. And as they say, banners fly forever. I don't know, before we get into the game, anything else that you kind of took away from the ring ceremony? I'll probably watch it again tomorrow, maybe, just to kind of see if I missed anything. But just cool to see all the faces that we've gotten used to over the past year, including Axel Toupane. Surprise appearance by Axel Toupane showing up, and obviously just one more opportunity to formally celebrate the most magical year in Bucks history, certainly since I've been alive.
No, nothing really to add. I mean, it was just awesome. I mean, it was just a feel-good ceremony, and to have that before the game. And thankfully, I know I mentioned this in the pod a couple of days ago, but there was some concern, I guess, from fans that they wouldn't be able to get in there. It looked pretty packed, so I hope that everyone was able to get in there on time. just a touch to the rings. I mean, they're incredible. They are incredible. And obviously we saw the different features, and you can unclip this thing and wear it as a necklace if you want to, if you don't want to wear the ring. There's a damn QR code on this thing, which I didn't even know. What is that? Brings up highlights or something like that. But
Something, yeah. When
just,
supposedly like it was Giannis's idea, I saw a tweet about this. So I mean, what doesn't he do? What doesn't Giannis do?
it was just incredible. And of course, Jim Paschke obviously was brilliant, as we knew that he would be running the ceremony. And I thought Giannis's smile when he went down to give him a hug was a pretty beautiful moment. So it was just awesome. And then we go across to the game. And like we said, I mean, the Bucks, the first couple of possessions there, they missed a couple of shots. And you're like, okay, well, a bit of a rusty start. We'll see how this game shakes out. And I really thought that the moment that that the arena was set alight and all of a sudden the Bucks found their energy, that sizzling touchdown pass from Chris Middleton to find Giannis. He dunks, James Harden fouls him, and by that point, the Bucks had skipped away a little bit. Of course, Giannis had a massive block on Nick Claxton as well. I don't know whether that was a shock to you. It certainly was a shock to me that they started Nick Claxton in this game. Clearly, the Bucks beat up on the Nets in the postseason in offensive rebounding and on the glass in general. To me, it felt like it was probably a counter to that. It didn't work. The Bucks were dominant physically early in this game, and really Giannis set the tone. I think he had 13 points and 8 rebounds in the first quarter. Not a bad start.
Yeah, I mean, and this was not really an efficient scoring night for him. I mean, 12 out of 25 is poor by his standards in terms of shooting from the field. But as you said, it kind of early, a number of those were kind of volleyballing the ball, getting his own rebound, getting some offensive rebounds off his own misses. So it didn't really necessarily matter too much. But yeah, I mean, he came out very quickly, hit a 3 in the first quarter as well. And again, I mean, I thought they actually did an okay job of kind of keeping him from just bullying them too badly, especially over kind of the after the first quarter. But as we've seen, I mean, Giannis, like most great players, he's a problem solver, and when you kind of play two big men, when you try to bring help on him, try to collapse on him, he's just really smart. And 7 assists tonight. Did get some late turnovers, so ended up with 4 turnovers, but I thought he generally played very under control. Hit 7 of 9 free throws, so making the cross pointing to the heavens for those not on the live stream. That was obviously great to see him looking confident with that new shortened free throw routine. So yeah, I mean, the MVP was the MVP basically, and certainly set the tone early with the way that he was playing. And it's sort of one of those things that didn't the Nets start 0 for 5 from 3, and then I think at one point they were 11 of 19, and I think they finished 17 out of 32. I want to say. I mean, it was kind of funny because it felt like they couldn't make any shots early, and then they went absolutely on fire for the remainder of the first half. And they were out shooting the Bucks from the field and from 3. And even you look at the final numbers, they end up shooting the ball very well from 3, 17 out of 32, 53%. Right? If you had said the Nets are going to shoot 53% from 3, would you have guessed the Bucks win this game by 23 points? No. But other than that 3-point shooting, and again, the Bucks held their own, 17 out of 45. But man, the possession game obviously really swung in their favor. And kind of as you're alluding to, the Nets going big clearly was presumably meant to counter what we saw from the Bucks throughout the playoffs, but including that Nets series where they just got extra possessions on offensive rebounds and really hurt teams down low. But you look at the net result, +8 in the paint, 42 to 34. Not a great paint points in the paint night from the Bucks, but they held the Nets down only 39% on 2-pointers from the Nets tonight. And I mean, the rebounding, as you mentioned, 25% offensive rebound rate for the Bucks. That's right around where they were last year during the regular season. I mean, not great. They were right at 30% during the playoffs. But 89% defensive rebound rate for the Bucks is terrific. And especially when you consider the fact that, you were not very big for large portions of this game. I thought the Bucks did a great job of, again, protecting the rim. Brook Lopez was great around the basket. His box score does not do justice to how well he played protecting the rim and the paint. And I thought they swarmed really well. And you never felt like, even with those bench lineups, that they were like too small or that they couldn't defend, which is saying something because, I mean, this was a night where both two-way guys ended up playing, minutes in the first 3 quarters when the game was still competitive. So Definitely they had to go deeper than they wanted. Drew Holiday, unfortunately, leaving with a heel contusion after a really good start. Bud said after the game that he already had an MRI that came back clean. So you cross your fingers that, he'll be back hopefully by the next game, or maybe just out a game or two. But yeah, weird game in a lot of respects, just based on the number of guys that we saw. And I'm sure we'll talk about some performances from some of the complimentary guys that were very welcome but maybe not expected.
Yeah, I think the depth part of this is super interesting moving forward, because I think we've spoke about the fact that we think that this team is deeper, but I don't think that we would have anticipated or hoped that they would have had to go that deep on opening night. It was kind of funny to see both of those two-way players play. Now, we know Giannis loves his smoothies or his shakes, and maybe he wants to go to McDonald's after this game. We know he has no problem with going to get some fast food after a big win. And this episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for a study group. I never had a study group in my whole entire life, but they can go there because they know they've got dependable Wi-Fi. I've definitely used the free Wi-Fi at McDonald's. So win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team or the away team can come to recharge. It's a place where you look forward to stopping at on a long road trip to rest your legs and refuel. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. Did someone say Locked On Bucks watch party? I'm loving it. Now,
by the way, I as someone with a 3.5-year-old, the Happy Meal is a rite of passage for every road trip we go on, and I'm a big chicken McNugget guy. And a strawberry shake. Oh man, I don't usually get a strawberry shake. That's like a special treat. But strawberry shake, chicken McNuggets. You are kind of making me hungry right now. But enough with the ad read, Kane. I feel like I've given enough organic plugging of McDonald's.
No, you're a McDonald's fan. That's fine to know. But I'm also a fan of sleep. And do you know what makes LeBron James, King James, sleep? That's right. Sleep is his superpower. Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has teamed up with LeBron James to help you activate the power of sleep. LeBron and Calm know that your mind is like any other muscle in your body, and you don't have to be a world champion to learn how to train it. And by the way, he loves his naps. For LeBron, sleep is a critical part of his mental fitness routine. So if you head to calm.com/lockedonnba for a limited time, you'll get a 40% off Calm Premium subscription. With Calm, you have access to nature scenes LeBron loves, like rain on leaves, and so much more, like sleep stories, meditation, so you can be ready for any challenge that life throws your way. For a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount on a Calm Premium subscription at calm.com/lockedon. Content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/lockedonnba. That's calm.com/lockedonnba. McDonald's and sleep, Frank. What a combination. So as we roll through this, you mentioned Drew Holiday, and this was significant at the time because if you were and of course you hope that he doesn't spend an extended period on the sidelines. As you said, the MRI looks like it's come up clean. But just for this game in general, you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, now you've got James Harden in the second half. George Hill will play, but you're looking at the depth and you have a number of guys out already. And it did produce some interesting lineups. There was a lineup towards the back end of the third quarter where I think Thanasis was almost the 5. You had Pat Connaughton out there, George Hill, Jordan Nwora. So I saw some comments about the lineups. I mean, honestly, you just had to improvise. This was kind of what we spoke about on the preview podcast, where I said that Mamukelashvili was the backup big, but it didn't necessarily mean he was going to play. I just think at this time, you see that Bud has more trust in Pat Connaughton and these guys. But I also think, as far as guys that stood up, Pat Connaughton was excellent. He had 20 points. But the caption I've got here is Jordan Nwora doing stuff. And I saw that you tweeted about it, Frank, because I wouldn't say that Jordan Nwora is normally a player that we say is doing stuff. We say he's scoring. He's getting buckets. And he did do that. And the 15 points was certainly handy. But I thought he hit the glass. He had that nice steal in the first quarter where he kind of just ripped the ball out of, I think it was Millsap's hands, laid it in. He had a block on Durant. It was almost like a strip block, but he was just doing different things, Frank. And listen, this is what they've been talking about all preseason and the types of things that I think are going to help him continue to get minutes when the Bucks hopefully get some of these players back.
let's acknowledge, I mean, this was really the first time Jordan Nwora has gotten extended run when the Bucks were not just basically playing, the second unit and they were resting all their main guys. I mean, he had a couple of opportunities, like I think like the Sacramento game last year in California where he played a little bit of real rotation minutes. But for the most part, I mean, he's never seen minutes like this with the Bucks. At least I hesitate to say full strength, but with Giannis and Chris and those guys in a competitive game. So for him to come out and again, he was very good generally in the preseason, and for him to translate that and come out and a lot of ways, I think maybe Drew being hurt was almost easier for him because it meant that he was going to need to have the ball and he was going to have to make some plays. The shot he hit, that little floater that he hit at the end of the third quarter, was a really big shot to put the Bucks up 12. It had gotten cut down to 8 on a Joe Harris 3, but they came back and get a couple of buckets right there before the going into the fourth quarter. And after that, it really wasn't, they extended it from there at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I mean, I think just for him to come out and be able to find a rhythm off the bench, as you said, little quieter start, but he gets that rip to get a layup early on and then kind of grew into the game as it went on. And again, 6 out of 13, 15 points. I mean, this isn't like, a nuclear Jordan Nwora game or anything like that. I
Which
think
is
you
good,
worry
right?
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, well, I think you worry a little bit, in terms of like his overall efficiency, given he doesn't really draw fouls, and he does settle for a lot of kind of tough mid-range twos and kind of step back twos. His efficiency probably will not be great, or it will be maybe sneaky, not great because of just his shot selection. But him hitting 3 out of 6 threes, and again, a couple of those were spot up looks. Nets don't get back in transition, and he makes them pay. It was just obviously a really, really nice debut for him for this season, and for him to basically say like, yeah, the stuff I was doing in the preseason, I'm ready to translate it. And again, Shemi Ojale hurt, Rodney Hood hurt / invisible when he played in that one preseason game. Those guys are going to have to prove that they deserve to play over a guy like Jordan, and certainly a really good start for him. And hopefully this is, again, it's the first game of the season. You don't want to overreact, but he's been building to this, and he obviously has a skill set that I think works well with the rest of this lineup. And I thought, you mentioned that the block. I mean, to me, that was maybe the highlight of the game. I mean, there were a bunch of cool plays, but for Giannis kind of got took a step the wrong way. Durant yanked him at the top of the key, and Jordan and Durant's going to the rim, and Jordan comes over, and I'm ready for Jordan to get just posterized, but he comes up and kind of, you're right. I mean, it wasn't like at the apex type block, but I mean he was jumping and got Durant sort of as he was going up. Thankfully, no whistle. The refs saw it was a clean block, and then it heads the other way, and I think it was Grayson Allen that then hits a 3-pointer on the other end. So huge momentum play, and again, you're not expecting Jordan to be a lockdown defender or something like that, but there were 2 straight possessions where he was on Durant. Durant settled for a 3 that he missed, and Jordan contested reasonably well in one. And the next one, Jordan got yanked a little bit, but then there was some help, and Durant, I think, missed a layup. So and then he also had a possession against Harden. So out of the frying pan into the fire, like he definitely had to be present defensively. He wasn't just hiding all game long. And it wasn't like the Nets were really like hunting him per se. It was just organically he had to match up with Durant and transition, things like that. So yeah, just a really nice start for him, something to build on. And we'll see what happens with Drew, but certainly if Drew's out, Chris Middleton, who just quietly did his thing tonight. Chris was marshaling the offense for most of the second half. They're going to need people that can create shots off the out of pick and roll, one-on-one, especially if Drew is going to be out for a game or two, hopefully not longer. And obviously that's something that Drew really has, Jordan really has a skill set for. And so yeah, good night for Jordan Nwora, and fun to see him doing stuff and making a difference in a game that matters, which we haven't really been able to say so far.
Yeah, and I did tweet during the game, and I said, look, I think he's a rotation player, and Eric Name guilted me into deleting it. He's like, what he's like playing to the crowd. Well, first of all, I was talking about Rodney Hood and potentially Thanasis, as you sort of pointed to, not necessarily Dante DiVincenzo. I think he's still got some work to do to obviously solidify that spot in the rotation moving forward. But he certainly throws the challenge up to a guy like Thanasis or Rodney Hood that he's going to be battling for minutes. I thought Thanasis tonight, he played 12 minutes. He also found himself in that position where he had to defend Harden on a few possessions. And to his credit, I mean, I think that would have been automatic foul last year, and he defended him on multiple possessions without
Put his hands behind his back.
Yeah, he did. And it's tough. It's tough when you're put in that position to defend Harden. I thought Harden did a lot of complaining tonight, but not necessarily. He didn't necessarily get the results that he usually gets with the whistle, which was pleasing to see, I think, from our point of view, watching him play. And honestly, Durant was pretty good. He got his points. But for the most part, in the first half of this game in particular, it was the little Australian, the pesky Aussie, that was keeping the Nets just within striking distance. I mean, they were down double digits, but Patty Mills was the guy who was keeping them involved. And everyone that listens to this show long term knows how much I love Patty Mills. But the man was 7 for 7, scorching hot. I thought it made sense that you don't start him. I don't think you need to start him alongside Harden and Durant. But no doubt they needed him tonight, because this Nets team in general, and it's only one game, we're not going to overreact to it. But there's a lot of guys that are playing tonight that you're like, I don't know whether they're going to trouble too many good teams. There's a lot of old bodies out there.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I assumed, I mean, I don't know if I think we talked about it. I mean, I think they started Bruce Brown with Blake at center in the last preseason game that they played as well, which is, we got used to seeing that combination during the playoffs last year. And I think Bruce Brown, again, the interesting thing is, playing Clarkson allows Brook to really hang back, given that Clarkson isn't a shooter. But the irony is, even if you start Bruce Brown, we saw them put Brook on Bruce Brown for extended periods last year, and basically just tell Bruce Brown, like, go ahead, shoot threes if you want. So it's a little interesting, because as much depth as the Nets theoretically have, Aldridge, we didn't really see him doing much of anything around the perimeter. As far as, I mean, I don't think he took a three tonight. He kind of struggled to really take advantage of some of his size mismatches that he had. And I mean, he was 0 for 2. Chris Middleton was, slapping the ball away, finally got a foul call, and then he missed both free throws. Ball don't lie. But yeah, I mean, Aldridge didn't really look very dangerous. Paul Millsap plays 5 minutes and just kind of looked old in those 5 minutes, again, it's early in the season.
Yeah, one game.
I mean, we'll see kind of what any of this means, but yeah, I mean, that was sort of the irony. It was, you kind of, it feels like the Nets are much deeper this year, but obviously you take Kyrie out of the equation. I mean, otherwise they were healthy tonight, but you look at the bench, Patty Mills scored 21 points, 7 out of 7 from 3, 0 for 4 on twos. Everybody else, Cam Thomas had 2 free throws in garbage time. He was 0 for 2. LaMarcus Aldridge had 1 point, and James Johnson had 1 point. So yeah, not really a shining night for the depth. In Clarkson, he had 12 points on 9 shots, but it felt like they really had to. I mean, Harden was really trying to get him going. At one point, they got him on an and one, and Harden looked to the sky as if to say, thank heavens we finally got one. But yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. I mean, I think the Nets have talent. They clearly have, I think, enough talent to win a championship. But we'll see. I mean, if Millsap, it's kind of like it's not as extreme as the Lakers, right? But you look at Millsap and Aldridge, and you kind of your tendencies to think oh yeah, Aldridge coming back, that's a really good get for them. And Paul Millsap, they have Paul Millsap, but we'll see. I mean, it's a long season. I wouldn't read too much into one game, but what do those guys have left? And also just, especially, I mean, Aldridge was made his meal ticket was as a scorer. I mean, what is he going to be like as sort of a bench piece guy? I think Blake Griffin has adapted well generally to kind of his complementary role. He wasn't great tonight, but I don't know. We'll see. And the fact that they tried to play big and it just didn't work at all tonight, I think certainly, is an encouraging sign for the Bucks, because certainly throughout the playoffs last year, that was one thing that nobody could just play big with the Bucks, basically, right? They just really hurt teams on the glass, hurt teams with their size, hurt teams in transition all of last season. And again tonight, 21 to 15 fast break benefit tonight, so not a massive benefit, but 21 fast break points tonight. 123.5 offensive rating, 101.2 defensive rating, which is terrific. I mean, again, still amazing that you could hold the Nets down to that type of offensive performance when they shoot that well from three. But again, it just shows you, as much as we say that the game now is so much about 3-point shooting, there's still a lot of other components to winning basketball. And I mean, the Bucks are probably the best example, right? Given they won an NBA championship without really being able to shoot consistently throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, so just the last note on the depth. I mean, they are deep in terms of the names that they have, but they're kind of all the same type of player with Blake Griffin, Millsap, Aldridge, Claxton, Bruce Brown. It's like, well, what are you going to do with all those guys? So we'll see.
James Johnson.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll see how.
By the way, Giannis, like the first touch he had against James Johnson, he just took him baseline real quick and got up for a quick layup, which I was pleased to see just because I think probably a lot of us remember when James Johnson and Hassan Whiteside were in Miami against like the younger, not quite as strong and mature Giannis. I mean, that combination probably caused Giannis more problems than like any defensive duo that I think maybe he's seen in the NBA. I was not sad to see those guys leave Miami, even though they're not exactly like great players. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, James Johnson, it's like if he's not like a really plus defender, and we'll see. I mean, maybe he still has something left in the tank, and he's always been sort of fairly switchable. But offensively, like he's like a dribble handoff guy who's not really stretching the floor. I mean, they definitely have some names, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see like who from those guys that actually pans out in terms of earning minutes, and do some of those guys eventually get DeAndre Jordan, right? And just like end up not playing at all in the playoffs, which of course is the irony. Last year, DeAndre Jordan gets the Giannis assignment for basically all the regular season, and then the playoffs come around and he literally doesn't get off the bench. So I don't know. Let's just say I don't think we saw all of Steve Nash's cards tonight in that regard.
Yeah, James Johnson and Hassan Whiteside definitely used to make Giannis sweat back in 2017. And I think Giannis worked on his game, but I think he also got in touch with the people from Sweatblock. And we're talking about Sweatblock wipes here today. For a few weeks, we've been talking about Sweatblock, actually. These are the wipes that stop sweat for 7 days. And it seems like people have been listening. We have friends of Locked On who've tried Sweatblock and love it. So listen, we've got a bunch of examples. This is a success story here about an avid soccer player. He heard us talking about Sweatblock and he thought it was too good to be true, but he was always the wettest guy after practice and games, like soaking wet. So he thought he'd give Sweatblock a shot. He tried it on his pits. The next practice, his pits were dry while everything else was wet. I guess he should, well, I'm not reading that part. He says he didn't have to reapply for 9 days. Now he's a true believer. There you go. Locked On listeners are simply loving Sweatblock, so you can stop excessive sweat for 7 days per use. If you or someone you care about is dealing with excessive sweat, you have to check out Sweatblock. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code Locked On at Amazon or CVS. And Frank, if you ever needed any further evidence that I don't read the ad reads before we are live doing this show, then you just got it then, because I was feeling increasingly uncomfortable as I was reading it. Very, very uncomfortable.
Was that Nick Claxton? Was that Giannis on Nick Claxton play? Was that a sweat block? We may need it. We may need to get like a sweat block of the game or something like that. Can run that up the flagpole, Kane. We'll see if we can maybe get you some extra, little extra on the side for going a little sweat block, a little more stuff there. But anyway,
I'm just going to try and compose myself and finish the last segment of the show after that. One guy we haven't spoken about, Grayson Allen, become a.
By the way, we also need to talk a little. We mentioned him, but we also, after Grayson Allen, we need to talk a little bit more about Pat Connaughton. We can't take Pat Connaughton solely for granted. But yes, let's talk about Grayson Allen. He's a new face. He just got the extension. Let's talk about him.
We're talking about the new faces here. And let me just say, I was listening to Zach Lowe and Kevin Pelton on the podcast yesterday. And Zach Lowe mentioned Pat Connaughton as one of the sneaky, underrated contracts in the NBA. And I was laughing thinking about the conversations we had. Pat was great tonight, 20 points. Still the best cutter on the team. Giannis
20 points on 13
points.
shots.
20 points.
Like,
Pat. I said this. Maybe he had his 3-point percentage become more consistent. Maybe Pat still has some room to grow as well in this system on this role play. I'm not saying he's going to get you 20 a night, but he used to be looked at or viewed at as an inconsistent shooter and an inconsistent player. And I think last year we saw him become, a really, really consistent contributor with this team. The new face is Grayson Allen. The stats I have up here Well, actually, I've stuffed up this graphic. I already spelt Giannis' last name wrong at the start of the show, and I had to edit it on the fly. And now I've just got 3-point attempts. I meant 10 3-point attempts. So
by the way, do we really need to put Giannis's last name in a graphic on this show? Do people need to need clarity on which Giannis we're talking about? Come on, you don't have to do that much work, Kane.
I was trying to show off that I know how to spell his last name, and I failed. So I guess it was just a big mistake on my part. But you learn these lessons. So Grayson Allen, 10 3-point attempts. Giannis spoke during the preseason at times. He had conversations with him. You got to shoot this shot. You got to let this fly in this situation. We want you shooting. He got off to a bit of a cold start. Got some great looks. Missed some early attempts. But I loved it. I loved the looks he was getting, because if you see Grayson Allen generating those types of shots, you're going to like it through the course of the season. He didn't lose his confidence. He knocked some down. And the 6 assists, I almost didn't really notice it during the game, but just looking at the box score after, it's a nice number.
Yeah, I think it was more, ball movement rather than, him like
creative,
running a bunch of pick and roll, right? Although that one play, that kind of side pick and roll where he took a handoff and Brook rolled to the rim and he kind of threw it over top to Brook for a dunk, that was really nice. And again, I think, tonight he was the de facto point guard at times in the second half, just because of the Drew absence and George Hill having some foul trouble. I don't think you obviously want to plan for that, although he did that, I think, a bit in college. But yeah, again, I think somewhat like Dante, just in the sense that, he's got certainly good size if he's out there at the point guard spot, and he can bring the ball up the court. He can, get you into your offense. And again, I think he's a little bit more dangerous as a pick and roll guy than Dante, just because of the shooting and finishing, just being a little bit more reliable. But yeah, as you said, started off nervous. I thought, to me, I was most interested in kind of what he looked like defensively. He was guarding Joe Harris, so Chris. We should talk about Chris on KD, but he basically, Grayson ended up slotting in for Chris last year. Chris was on Joe Harris. PJ was obviously on Durant most of that series. They kind of flip-flopped it with Grayson essentially slotting in for PJ now here to start the season. And it's really difficult, right? Because they put Joe Harris into dribble handoffs. They put him into screening actions, small screening actions. And so they clearly wanted to make Grayson Allen have to think and make quick decisions. Is he going to hedge and recover? Is he going to try to chase Joe Harris over a screen? Is he going to try to switch? It wasn't always like, especially early on, like I don't know that he really got punished a lot for it, but it was clearly, a little, there were definitely some nervous moments there. And I thought, again, though, as the game went on, I thought he held up fine. I think that's going to be the big question, when you think about the playoffs, is just, again, what does he look like defensively? Can he be competitive enough? Again, as I said last night, I'm not worried about him being more competitive than Bryn Forbes. This was an encouraging night on that respect. And probably the best example was James Harden gets him on. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was the switch or what it was, but James Harden gets him in the post, and Grayson ends up poking the ball away for a steal. And again, he's not going to do that every time. Physically, stronger guys are going to be able to get into him and take advantage of him a little bit. But I think all you can ask of these guys is that they're competitive. They use, in the case of Grayson, Dante, Pat, they use their athleticism as best they can on the boards. As well as just challenging shots and things like that. Like he got stuck on a switch and had to try to stop Nick Claxton on a roll to the rim. Obviously he's not going to be able to do much in a situation like that. But overall, a very fine, okay start to his career. And he was obviously on the floor for a number of those runs where the Bucks were kind of breaking it open and hit a couple big threes in that regard. And end of the night, he's second on the team in plus minus, a plus 23 and in 28 minutes, 10 points, those 6 assists, 2 steals, no turnovers, no fouls. So yeah, I think you'll take it for early returns from the Grayson Allen contract, looking just fine.
Yeah, and he was actually the player that paid off the Jordan Nwora block strip, whatever you want to call it. He was down the other end, got down in transition, knocked down the 3, and it was pretty much party time at that point. Frank, I got to get to work. I got to get back to work. I could talk about the defense. We could talk about Chris Middleton, who at the end of the night, you just casually looked up and he had 29 and 3 or 4 assists, whatever that number was. He just did Chris Middleton things, hit some tough shots. Pat Connaughton, as you mentioned, was interesting. There was some defensive stuff that I think was interesting in the way that on the other end of the floor, the Nets wanted to switch everything. The Bucks seemed very comfortable with that, and particularly a guy like Chris Middleton. There was a couple of times there where he had a bigger guy defending him, and he sees a Javon Carter, for instance, and he's like, listen, Justin Robertson, you just stand here, pretend you're going to set a screen. I'll get the switch onto Javon Carter and then knock down a turnaround jump shot. So the Bucks look pretty comfortable in that regard. Before we wrap it up, though, I do have to thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. We're in the season now. We're in the throes. The Bucks head to Miami. They've got a road trip coming up here. So we're with you every single day. So we appreciate you guys listening. Frank, I still thought, I just want to say, I still thought there was an outside chance that I was going to get on Twitter today and you were going to be in Milwaukee. You were going to be in the arena somehow, a last-ditch bid to get to Fiserv Forum for Banner Night. But even watching from afar, it was a cool day.
Yeah, it was a really cool day. And I have to add, just as we're going out, Chris Middleton, I thought, taking the challenge against KD. I mean, KD obviously got to his spots. You're not going to do a whole lot about it, but 13 out of 25, 32 points. I think you can live with that, right? And again, I think Chris generally competed well. And again, you'd love to still have PJ Tucker to throw at KD, but I think Chris, acquitted himself pretty well just in general, competing, for the most part, being a stand-up guy, doing what needed to be done. And for the most part, it's nice. Pat Connaughton, I'm not worried when Pat Connaughton gets switched on to like James Harden or Kevin Durant now. I mean, again, are they like great matchups for those guys? No, but I think again, we've just sort of seen so much from these guys over the past few months going back through the playoffs that, we've seen them put in the reps and be able to compete in ways that you need to win a championship. So, I think we can talk a little bit more about the tactics next time. But I thought it was a very emblematic night in the sense that there was a lot of switching, especially when obviously Brook was off the floor. Mamu hung in pretty well against James Harden and then got 2 just step backs knocked in his face, which is like,
what
that
are you going to
happens.
do? Step back.
I thought he was fine. I thought he did everything he could. Giannis did have the same thing happen to him. But I thought it was an interesting combination. A lot of switching when they were small, and I thought generally it kind of worked reasonably well. And then I thought Brook was great when he was in, they were playing their zone drop and, they competed well and really gummed up the interior. So pretty classic Bucks, I would say, or at least classic new Bucks relative to what we saw over the past few months. The formula, formula still works. Not a bad way to start your championship defense.
82-0 is still a possibility. We'll see. We'll see what happens in Miami. But we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back post-game against Miami as well as we start to roll through the regular season, get back in the swing of things. So we appreciate you guys listening and joining the show. And I'm sure you all had fun watching the Bucks tonight beat the Nets 127-104. For Frank and myself, we'll catch you guys tomorrow.